Okay, so we're going to get started with our homework for this week. We're going to dive right in. Monday says, complete each equation with a number that makes it true. Don't forget, you can multiply by fractions and or whole numbers. Explain your answers. So I'm going to do a couple examples here. Oh, here's 6, 7, guys. I went and showed you the answer. That's not what I meant to do. 8 times something is going to equal 56. 6 times something is going to equal 3. I'm going to do these examples. They should help you with any of these. So one of the expectations is that you explain. So your brain might be able to fill that answer in, but I want you to kind of justify it or prove it. And one of the ways to do that, when we're trying to find a missing number, is that you can use the opposite operation. So what I mean by that is instead of multiplying, I'm going to use the opposite, which is dividing. And I'm going to go in the opposite direction. So if I take 56 and I divide it by 8, it will tell me that missing number. So 56 divided by 8, if you need a calculator, that's fine with me. It's going to be 7. So my answer here would be 7. This explains kind of the why it works that way. You can double check, put 8 times 7 in your calculator, make sure it really is 56. But that should help on problems like this, where it's not a whole number. 6 times something and I need to get down to a 3 and I'm multiplying. Well, let's try our division. So we're going to go the opposite direction, start with the 3, divide by 6, put that in your calculator, it's going to tell you 0.5. Or 1/2 if you were using fractions. That's what I would need to do to cut that number down. I'd have to multiply it by a fraction. So you should be able to use that for each of these, but don't forget to explain if you want full points. Pause there for Monday. Okay, let's look at Tuesdays. So Tuesday says use a number line, words or pictures to explain. Both of these are adding, and they're the rules we've talked about in class, so you could use words to explain it. Why, if I have 2 negative numbers, what should I do when I'm adding 2 negatives? Write out the rule. What should I do if I'm adding one that's positive, one that's negative? Write out the rule that we've talked about in class, or it's in your notes if you need to get your notes out. Another way, if you wanted to use like a number line, you could. If you wanted to use integer chips, so if we were doing like, a negative 30, I could represent it like this. Sorry, negative 32. This would be negative 32, kind of shortened, so I don't have to write every one of them. And then I would have a negative 68. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then combining these, I would see why putting it all together is going to be negative 100, because they're all negatives. I'm just getting a bunch of negative. Okay? So you can explain like that. You could draw out a number line. Whatever it takes for you to explain why these are the correct answers. Then down here it says change this problem into an addition problem and then solve. So for example, if we had 5 minus a negative 1. What I mean by change it to addition is what we talked about on Monday in class. We have 5, change this to plus. So you're going to keep this one, change to a plus, and then do the opposite. Whenever it's subtraction, you can always do this. The opposite of a negative 1 is a positive 1, and then it's really obvious that this is 6. Okay, so you can change this, keep that one, change it to a plus. What's the opposite of negative 17? And then solve that problem. So pause there if you need that one. Okay, Wednesday says triangle DEF has vertices D, E, and F. Plot the triangle in the coordinate plane and label the vertices. Down here it says define vertices, because vertices is not a word that you maybe have used a lot. Vertices is if I had a triangle like this, these points would be my vertices. If I had a shape like this, these points would be my vertices. So it is the points on your shape are your vertices. You can Google it if you want your own words. You didn't like the way I explained it, but that's what a vertice is. So to graph this, I need to remember that the first is an X, and then we have a Y. Your X-axis is always the one that goes this way, so I'm going to label it X, and then Y up here. I'm going to use a different color maybe so it'll pop out a little bit more for you. So this is x, and then we've got our y. So now if I'm trying to plot this point, I need to go to my x first, so -4, and then I need to go to my y, which is -4. This time I'm going down over here. So this is the point -4, -4. That meets right there, and then to label it means put your D there. You could label it with its coordinates, but you need to do the rest of them also. So I'm going to let you plot these two. So remember, the first one is x. Move along the x. This is your y. Move up or down for the second one. Where do they meet? Put a dot and label it. Then draw out your triangle, because we should be able to see the triangle. Don't forget to define vertices. Okay, Thursdays says order these numbers from least to greatest. Explain why you chose to place at least one fraction. So one of the ways you can put them in order is think about a number line, which I would put 0 in the middle. There's my 0. Remember that this side is positive numbers. This side is negative numbers. And then if I was counting this way, I would go 1, 2, 3, and continue this way. It's like -1, -2, -3, -4. You need to figure out where these would go. Okay? Explain at least one fraction. So for example, I might want to explain how I knew where this 7/2 went. For my brain, it helps if I can see that in a decimal, because I can tell what number it's close to when it's in decimal form. And to change a fraction into a decimal in your calculator, you're going to do 7. That line means divide, divided by 2. See? You can see it looks just like 7/2, and it is 3.5. So to explain, I might do 7 divided by 2 is equal to 3.5. Seeing it as 3.5 will help me know where it fits on my number line. So you can do that with the other fractions that are here too, if it helps you to see it as a decimal and know where to place it on your number line. So remember your calculator, use that division symbol, and it will help you. That's it for this week. Not too bad. The video is right about 7.5 minutes. So you should be able to do that. And remember, if I can get a class that has 100% of their homeworks turned in, I will let them skip a week of homework. So that's your little incentive to really focus in. These homeworks have value, and getting them turned in is super important. So remind each other. Get your homework turned in by Friday. And that's it for this week. Have a great rest of your week.